My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is now in session. It is January 23rd, 2024, and without further ado, let's start the video, shall we? So, before we get to the main event, which is, of course, the Donetsk suburbs, we're going to talk about the events in other sections of the front line and what is going on there. Now, to first start off, we're going to talk about Krainki. Now, Krainki, as all of you know by now, has been a highly contested area of Ukraine, or should I say the Kherson Oblast, because the Ukrainians, for the last few months or so, have been trying to establish a stable bridgehead, like a beach bridgehead here, that would give them a gateway to the left bank Kherson Oblast, which constitutes for over 70+% of the province in Ukraine. Now, as of recent news, the Ukrainians are losing even more ground in Krainki, and it's all but now completely certain that Russia is eventually going to reclaim the entire settlement. And the Ukrainians will have no choice but to evacuate their forces back to the right bank of the Dnieper River in Kherson Oblast. I am not personally surprised by this news because it has become certainly clear as of late that the operation to stay in Krainki has been an absolute failure, and with all the losses piling up, it doesn't really, again, surprise me that the Ukrainians would leave Krainki. And with the Russians retaking Krainki, I am expecting them to double down on their defenses in the left bank Kherson Oblast. I'm absolutely certain they're going to do that. I wonder why they haven't really retaken the Dachi settlement yet. They have to, if they know what's good for them. But anyway, moving on. Not much to report there other than the fact that Krainki is about to fall to Russia. Zaporozhye Oblast. Now, as all of you know by now, again, the Ukrainian WOW offensive, or the Ukrainian counteroffensive officially, has failed in the Zaporozhye Oblast. And the failure is beginning to look even more apparent as Robotyne, which was one of the prizes that was, I guess, taken by the armed forces of Ukraine back in late summer 2023, is slowly becoming contested again. The Russians are getting very, very close to re-entering the settlement. In fact, the Russians are now just basically a trench away from re-entering the ruins of Robotyne. And it's not going to shock me in any shape or form if Russia re-enters this area. In fact, I believe what will happen is the Russians are going to eventually reclaim everything here, and they may be knocking on Orkhiv's doorstep once again. Now, obviously, the Russians have not been confirmed to re-enter Robotyne, but they're literally just like a feet or so away from doing just that. And once they retake Robotyne, it will only further cement the failure of the Ukrainian counteroffensive in summer 2023. I've also heard reports that there are operations that are ongoing as well in the Velika Novosilka vicinity here, which is this area here. I'm not going to be shocked if Russia launches a counteroffensive in this area because, I mean, why not? They want to literally regain everything they lost. And especially, maybe they can retake Rivinopil as well. But, I digress. Nothing going on in the Marienka front. It seems to be frozen here, though everything seems to be tightly contested, all trench warfare. Ukrainians are really doubling down on defenses now because things are not looking good across the front. And, of course, we have to talk about the events in Bakhmut, or at least the Artyomovsk vicinity here. Apparently, the village of AVDIIVKA, the center of the village, has now fallen to the Russian army, according to the latest rumors. And it appears that more of the settlement, like half of it, has now fallen to Russia. And don't be surprised, of course, if Russia takes it. I think they're going to end up eventually taking Kalenia at some point. Kalenia. And then they're going to eventually also enter some high-rise apartment neighborhood here in Chazov Yar, and then they will be put to a halt there. Russia is definitely going to retake Klishivka and AVDIIVKA at some point. And I do think they will also eventually seize AVDIIVKA. It just all seems inevitable. And besides, the flanks of Artyomovsk have also now been further improved by Russia, and don't be surprised if they only further double down on that. And they're probably going to take lessons what they learned in summer, and that is to build better defenses for Artyomovsk to ensure that the Ukrainians don't get anywhere close to it again. Now, I've also heard that they're also doing well in the Seversk direction, but nothing really huge yet, but keep an eye on that. And I've also heard that the Russians are taking more territory within the Kharkiv Oblast, or the Kharkov Oblast. Yeah, things are improving for Russia here in the Kupiansk direction, though, again, nothing too significant yet, though it now seems that the Russians are now on the road leading to Kupiansk. But again, nothing too huge yet. I also heard reports that the Russians have entered some village, I think. It's like filled with some little shacks or what. And it's like right next to the border crossing. But nothing special. At least yet. AVDIIVKA, which is the name of this village here, has reportedly fallen to Russia, but I'm not going to really take this too seriously yet because, let's be honest here, it's a little too early, too soon for any big Russian wild offensives to take place in Kharkiv, though it wouldn't surprise me if they do it at some point because they got to secure Belgrade from any further Ukrainian attacks, but then that would also require them attacking in this direction here. So yeah, at some point Russians are going to have to return to Kharkiv Oblast completely, even though, I mean, I know what you're thinking, but they're still there because of Kupiansk. But if we're talking about like a large-scale return to Kharkiv Oblast, they will have to do that. Because, well, they got to secure Belgrade, and Kharkiv is also historically Russian territory, at least according to many Russian nationalists. But now, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, AVDIIVKA, the last notable suburb of Donetsk city. So, there hasn't really been much going on in AVDIIVKA until recently. It is now confirmed by various sources, both Russian and Ukrainian sources, that the southern neighborhoods of AVDIIVKA, which is here, by the way, in this area here, especially the outskirts, are beginning to fall to Russia. And Russia is now getting close to one of the last major fortifications of AVDIIVKA, which separates them from, I guess, the outskirts and downtown. This is downtown AVDIIVKA here. Now, if these fortifications here on the map that I'm pointing out to were to fall to Russia, then Russia can enter these areas here. This is where this is where the town hall is. This is where all the major high-rise buildings are. This is where the ATB market is. Literally, it's pretty much cooked at that point. Most of AVDIIVKA would fall to Russia then, and there's already reports of major street fighting going on in the town itself, and I'm not going to be surprised if by the end of February or so, the situation in AVDIIVKA only will further the Russians. So I am expecting maybe a big firefight, of course, to take place at the coke plant, but as far as I'm concerned, this battle could last another 1 to 2 months. And after we reach that mark, I am expecting things to only further worsen for the armed forces of Ukraine. Now, on the political side of things, the U.S. government is trying to get something passed, at least the Biden administration, okay? Senators are racing to win support for a border deal as aid to Ukraine hangs in the balance. Now, as all of you know by now, the Republican Party is refusing to pass any aid for the Ukrainians because they want something done about the border. And that, by the way, is Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, as you can see on here. And I'll read what the Associated Press here says. Senate negotiators were laboring Monday to win wide support for a deal on border policy as they entered what could be a pivotal stretch. Well, that's what they said at the end of December, by the way, before Christmas. Painstakingly negotiated compromise that could open the door for Republican votes to replenish U.S. wartime aid for Ukraine. a core group of negotiators has worked in private for nearly 2 months over changes to U.S. border and immigration policy and hope to unveil the legislation later this week. But the bipartisan group is treading on one of the most explosive issues in American politics. And the legislation faces heavy skepticism from the wings of both political parties, including Donald Trump, Republican, the presidential frontrunner, by the way. And he's probably going to win the primary because he not only won the Iowa caucus, but he's also expected to win in New Hampshire, too, tonight. And House Speaker Mike Johnson, an arch conservative who has shown little willingness to compromise on the issue. With the House on recess and the Senate that has an opportunity this week to gain momentum for the initiative, but Republican senators have said they did not expect to vote on this bill this week as negotiations turned to funding the policy changes. Now, I think somewhere in this article, okay, has pointed out something that I definitely agree with, okay, that it seems all but quite a little obvious that Republicans are using Ukraine aid as sort of like a leverage, sort of as a card. And Democrats, of course, are panicking over this because it's not looking good in any shape or form. And they also got to resolve the migration crisis, too, on the southern border. And besides, I heard there was recently a decision made on the United States Supreme Court in which, and this includes 2 conservative justices, the Chief Justice himself and Amy Coney Barrett, both basically allowing more illegals to flood the country. Yeah, people are not happy about that on the right-wing side in the United States. But I've read somewhere that Republicans are basically using this, not only as a card, but as leverage. Yeah, here we go. The Independent has pointed out, against the administration and Democrats in funding bills. Within weeks, Ukraine will run out of certain air defense capabilities, and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is reported as having told the assembled lawmakers that could lead to wide expansion of Russia's air assaults on not just the front lines across Ukraine. Not just on the front lines, but targets across Ukraine. So they're talking about like military targets, like on the industrial side of things, but also on civilian infrastructure too. Ukraine could only effectively remain a capable fighting force for a few months, possibly even just a few weeks, which I think is pure fear-mongering because I don't think Russia's going to advance that much. If further U.S. aid was not passed by Congress, if they didn't get anything done. A defeat of Ukraine would have quite a very nasty image on the U.S. Countries caught between the U.S. and Russia or China would likely rethink decisions to seek closer ties with the U.S., like rethinking ties. Like basically they would side with other countries, like other foreign powers across the world. But yeah, so things are not looking good on the U.S. side of things. And as of late, Zelensky has been going across all over Europe. He's been going to Poland more. He's been going to the Baltics more. He's been trying to go to France and Germany more. I mean, the man is in big trouble. And Slovakia and Hungary are also further doubling down, too, on basically no jack shit to Ukraine. It's gotten that bad. And I also want to point out that also just earlier today, I've also heard reports that Boryspil International Airport, which is the main airport in all of Ukraine, like literally the biggest airport in all of Ukraine, was just struck by Russian missiles. Maybe the runways were destroyed along with maybe, I guess, some terminals or something for the passengers or what. It's literally now unusable. Like, people literally cannot use it. They just can't. But yeah, so the situation is further deteriorating for Ukraine. Right now, I don't see any reason to believe that a big Russian offensive is inevitable. Or like, I don't see a reason to believe that it's like not inevitable or what. Because it almost seems likely that it's coming. Maybe late spring, maybe summer or so. If, of course, Ukraine gets no funding from the United States any further. And besides, we're in an election, people. Election 2024 is coming, and a lot of people in the country are not happy about aid to Ukraine. Even Democrat voters and independents are becoming more skeptical of aid to Ukraine. So if anything, I feel like the public opinion has now shifted against it. Because let's be honest, it's a waste of money and a waste of time for a country that isn't even part of NATO and a country that is also so corrupt too. So going into November, if the issue is still present at the ballot box, one of the things that will be on the Americans' minds is Ukraine still worth saving? Is Ukraine worth this time, money, and energy? That's the question. Or should I say that's the big question. But yeah, anyway, that's all I got to say on today's video, folks. I hope you all enjoyed it. Comment below. Join the Discord server that I will pin below, by the way, in the top comment below. And I will see you all next time. Have a good day.